Welcome back to the table. This is the Roundtable for Men, a space for men who are carrying more than they say out loud. Last week we talked about carrying it all. The pressure, the responsibility, the constant weight a lot of us walk around with. Work, family, expectations. But here's the question that's been sitting with me since then. Why do we carry it this way? Why is our first instinct to tighten up instead of talk? Why do we push through instead of pause? Why does rest feel uncomfortable? A lot of that didn't start with us. It was modeled. It was absorbed. It was handed down quietly. Not because our fathers meant harm. Not because they failed us. But because they were carrying what was handed to them too. This isn't about blame. It's not a rebellion. It's responsibility. At some point, one of us has to decide what stops here. What are we going to pass down? And what are we finally going to put down? Because whether we realize it or not, and whether we want to or not, we are the examples now. So take a breath, settle in, grab your drink of choice, and pull up a chair. A lot of our homes looked alike. Mine was a home of strength, not weakness. Strength meant holding your feelings in and not expressing them. Not sitting down and addressing why you felt a certain way. There wasn't a lot of anger expressed toward my siblings or me. It wasn't explosive. It was just quiet. A lot of fake it till you make it. A lot of silence. Apologizing didn't really happen until we got older. And I can probably count on one hand the number of times I saw my dad cry in front of me. Looking back now, I just assumed that was normal. Then as I got older, I started spending more time at friends' houses. And I began to see that not every family handled things the same way. Not every home felt like that. My home life made me feel alone a lot of the time. Especially when it came to learning how to be a man. What I learned was this: silence is strength, tears are weakness, work is priority, family is important, but feelings are private. Now the reality is, I don't blame my dad. He was a single father raising 3 boys, trying to figure out fatherhood on his own, trying to survive. And after he met my stepmom, things shifted a little bit. He softened. She brought that out of him. Partly because I had voiced my pain to her. And even though I was raised in strength, she helped me learn how to express myself. But when you live inside something for long enough, You internalize it. I learned that if you're hurting, you carry it. And you keep moving forward. And after a while, that just becomes normal. That becomes your definition of manhood. That becomes the blueprint you use to raise your own kids. And most of the time, you don't even realize you inherited it. And if we're honest, a lot of us are still living inside the blueprint. For me, it shows up consistently. When I stress out, I get quiet. If I feel like I'm being scolded or criticized, I shut down. When the conversations get hard, I retreat. Just like I did when I was a kid. When I get overwhelmed, I disappear into the shadows. There have been times where I chose to overwork instead of talk. I pushed myself so hard once that it literally caught up with me. At the time, I was working full-time as an assistant general manager at Taco Bell. And on top of that, I was delivering newspapers overnight. So my days looked a lot like this. Work all day, leave work, go home, take care of a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, or almost 1-year-old. And then I went on a full delivery route through the night. Then I tried to sleep a few hours and started all over the next day. And one morning, I finished my route. I was almost home. There's a hill right next to where we used to live at the time. And somewhere at the top of the hill, I fell asleep at the wheel. I woke up just before the impact, right before the car hit a tree. The officer who responded told me something that has stuck with me ever since. He said if I had been going any faster, I probably would have gone through the windshield. And the crazy part is, I wasn't even surprised it happened. Because that's what I thought responsible meant. Push harder, sleep less, handle everything yourself. Even if it runs you straight into the ground. And even after that, I tried to push harder. Because my default setting is this. If I'm struggling, I work more. If I'm hurting, I grind. If I'm overwhelmed, I isolate. My favorite thing to say when I'm at my breaking point is I'm fine. Even when I know I'm not. When I'm at home resting, I feel guilty. Especially when I know we're financially tight. So I push. And this is where things get even heavier. Because these patterns don't stay inside our heads. They follow us home. Something we don't talk about enough is how these patterns follow us into our homes. Not because we want them to, but because they were never interrupted. When we shut down emotionally, our wives feel it. They feel the distance. They feel the silence. And a lot of the time, they start blaming themselves. They start wondering, did I do something wrong? Did I push too hard? When in reality, you're not even mad. You're overwhelmed. You're carrying things you don't even know how to explain yet. And then there's our kids. With their little sponges of minds. Kids don't just listen to what we say. They watch how we live. They watch how we handle pressure. They watch how we handle frustration. They watch how we handle failure. And whether we realize it or not, they start learning this version of manhood from us. Not from what we teach them, but from what we model. And that's where this gets serious. Because if we don't confront the things that we've inherited, our kids won't inherit our intentions. They'll inherit our habits. And I don't know about you, but I don't want my kids inheriting my habits. Some of the things I do right now aren't healthy. Bottling up emotions, carrying pressure silently instead of leaning on someone like my wife, getting angry over small things because the bigger things are sitting underneath it. That's not what I want my kids to carry into their relationships. That's not the kind of men I want them to grow into. Some things in life are out of our control. But the example we set in our homes, that part is on us. I don't want my boys thinking that being a man means being alone. Being silent. Suffering without anyone knowing. Because the truth is, a lot of us men live like that now. We shut down. We carry everything ourselves. And eventually, that pressure builds up to a breaking point. That's why so many men end up overwhelmed. And why too many of them don't make it out to the other side. I don't want my kids becoming a statistic. And honestly, I don't want that for us either. That's why the habits have to change now. So the men they grow into are stronger than the version of us that learned to carry everything alone. A lot of the cycles we carry aren't just behaviors. There are beliefs. Beliefs that form quietly over time. Beliefs like, my value comes from what I produce. If I slow down, I'm falling behind. If I fail, I prove everyone right. Those beliefs are heavy. Because they don't just sit in the background. They drive everything. They drive how hard we work. They drive how we see ourselves. They drive the pressure we put on our own shoulders. And the dangerous part of this is, a lot of us never question them. We just assume they're true. We assume that's what being man looks like. But a lot of the time, those beliefs aren't truth. They're just inherited pressure. Pressure that got passed down generation to generation. Pressure that nobody ever stopped long enough to examine. There's usually a moment, and a lot of the time it's really, really obvious, when you start noticing a pattern. It might happen in a conversation. It might happen during an argument. It might happen when you hear yourself say something, and suddenly you recognize the voice. And it's not your voice. It's the voice you grew up around. The tone. The reaction. The shutdown. And for the first time in your life, you realize something. You didn't choose that reaction. You inherited it. And that realization can hit pretty hard. Because it forces you to face a question most of us avoid. Do I keep carrying this? Or do I stop it here? When you look back and realize that you've been speaking to your kids with the same tone, the same authority, the same voice your father used with you, that's an eye-opener. Not because your father was a bad man. Not because your parents failed you. But because you start realizing something. some of the things you experienced growing up, you don't want your kids experiencing the same way. And that's not disrespect towards our parents. That's growth. Every generation learns from the one before it. I think that's why you see so many men in our generation, especially millennials, trying to be more present fathers. Not because our parents were terrible, but because we're trying to build something better for our kids than what we had. Our parents didn't fail us. In a lot of ways, they showed us exactly what we wanted to change. And sometimes that's just as valuable. Because even the hard things we went through, the things that hurt, the things that caused some of that trauma, those are the things we learned from. Those are the things that push us to grow. And those are the things that make us stop and say, my kids are going to experience something better than that. And once you see those patterns, you can't just pretend they aren't there. Breaking cycles isn't dramatic. It doesn't look like a big speech. It doesn't happen overnight. Most of the time, it's small, quiet, uncomfortable. It's apologizing when you snap. It's saying I was wrong. It's admitting when you're overwhelmed, instead of pretending you have everything under control. I've had to learn that the hard way. Because pushing through everything is what put me asleep behind the wheel that morning. That's the cost of pretending you're fine when you're not. It's learning how to sit in emotions that nobody ever taught you how to process. It's choosing presence over constant proving. And the truth is, breaking cycles doesn't mean you never struggle again. It just means the struggle stops being invisible. It becomes something you face instead of something you pass down. And the truth is, my kids see me struggle sometimes. They see me dealing with stress. They see me dealing with my own thoughts. They see me working through things in life just like everyone else. And I know a lot of you listening probably deal with the same thing. But I'm learning something as a father. My kids don't need to see a man who hides everything. They need to see a man who can be honest about how he feels without taking those emotions out on people around him. So I'm trying to make sure my kids understand something. Dad isn't going to pretend he's fine all the time. But dad is also going to show them how to handle those feelings in a healthy way. And here's where I draw the line for myself. The silence has stopped here. The emotional shutdown stops here. The constant proving stops here. The belief that I'm only as valuable as my last success, that stops here. Not because I've mastered it. Not because I won't struggle with it again. But because I see it. And once you see it, you can't pretend you don't. My kids will not grow up believing that being a man means carrying everything alone. They will inherit steadiness instead of survival. And they will not have to unlearn what I've refused to confront. That's the promise. Not perfection. Interruption. The cycle stops here. It stops here. My kids will not grow up feeling alone the way so many men in my generation have. They will be the first generation in my family to grow up feeling safe and secure in who they are as men. They will know they can speak about how they feel. They will know they can open up in their relationships without being ashamed of it. Because being a man isn't about hiding your emotions. It's about understanding them. It's about being strong enough to face them. My boys will know that being a man means standing up for who you are, but also being honest about how you feel. You're allowed to say when something hurts. You're allowed to tell the people you love what's going on inside your head. That's not weakness. That's emotional strength. And that's what we all have to learn. Breaking cycles isn't loud. It's quiet. It's disciplined. It's the decision you make when no one is clapping for you. But you can interrupt it. You can pause before you react. You can choose to speak instead of shut down. You can apologize instead of defend. And those small decisions, repeated over time, become a different legacy. That's the weight of it. But here's the hope in it. You get to decide what they see. not perfection, not performance, steadiness, accountability, presence. If something in this episode hit you, please sit with it. And make one different decision this week. Just one. If this conversation is helping you grow, follow the show. Share it with another man who needs it. If you want to go deeper, the Roundtable Brotherhood is open. And if you want more structure around this work, you can join us on Patreon. Because if something stops with you, everything after you changes. Thanks for pulling up a chair. I'll see you next time at the Roundtable for Men.